Plane SAD2343, Earth number SD878. The prosperous seaside city, the endless blue sky, should have been pleasant weather. But at this moment, like a flash bomb erupting, the orange-red hot light erupted somewhere in the air, causing a burst of exclamation in the city. Many people noticed the change in the light and raised their heads in surprise. The orange-red light comes fast and goes fast. But the alien phase did not disappear directly. Was replaced by a dark crack, not big, about 4 or 5 meters long, like small black dots in the sky. If it weren't for the light just now, it would not have been noticed at all. A man stepped out of the crack. Hey, is there a person flying in the sky? It seems that it really is. Fake it, human-shaped balloon or something. What happened to the light just now? Although the crack disappeared quickly, the man stayed there and caused a little commotion in the city. Fortunately, it was high in the sky. It was just a specious little spot visible to the naked eye, and the commotion did not expand. Then, the sound of the helicopter gradually approached. It's a lie. The pilot of the helicopter, who was ordered to fly into the air, stared at everything in front of him dumbfounded. That is really a man. Was wearing a simple white t-shirt, her eyes closed tightly. Is actually floating in the air. Doesn't have any items visible to the naked eye that can support him from falling. There is even no airflow around him. Is really flying? Suddenly, the man opened his eyes abruptly, and the blue light bloomed in his eyes, spreading out in circles, forming a mysterious and gorgeous pattern. What? The driver and the observer really couldn't help exclaiming. There is a feeling that all three views have been torn away. Even if you are an idiot, you can perceive the obvious reality from this obvious abnormality at this time. This guy is definitely not an ordinary person. And the man himself, that is, Shen Yi, after using magic and precise observation ability, he also found several helicopters approaching at the first time. S expression suddenly became a lot more vivid. This is the situation again. I thought that teleporting to a high altitude could avoid too much movement. He has mastered the basic situation of this world, and confirmed through the observations just now, this is a super low magic world, basically the same as the previous world. Forget it. This is not the time to contact the leaders of this world. First understand some basic situations. Shen Yi thought this way, his figure disappeared without a trace in a ripple, leaving a face bewildered by the helicopter crew. However, everyone has sweaty palms, dry mouth, and heart beating violently. No, it's terrible. Really big event. Shen Yi on the other side did not pay attention to the thoughts of these people. He has appeared in the city where he ended up. In this endless street, he is just a handsome guy who has attracted the attention of many girls. A prosperous modern city. Shen Yi sighed, his eyes even a little trance. System. He said silently in his heart, a screen that only he could feel, opened in his mind. Savior system. The name of this system. Shen Yi didn't know where he came from. He was just a chosen Xian on the same blue planet, and the purpose of the system was to go to the destroyed world one by one, to serve as the savior and prevent human civilization. Perish. This is not the first apocalyptic world that Shen Yi went to. Is the second one. In the last world, the end of the outbreak was a virus crisis. Is not the zombie virus in most of the doomsday works, but the disease-causing virus. The transmission speed is extremely fast, the transmission method is diverse, the lethality rate is extremely high, and it has a strong mutation ability. Even without parasites, it can continuously produce chromosomal mutations in the external environment. Doomsday virus. When Shen Yi was in that world, he still hadn't really understood the nature of the doomsday, and his strength was very weak, and he was unable to change the result of the virus outbreak. After all, the function of the system is very simple. For every person saved, 1 point is awarded. Use points to draw a lottery. As long as the items are drawn, they can be purchased in the mall with points infinitely. If it weren't for the last moment, the European Chi burst into the system to draw rare props and wizards, and consumed a lot of points to accumulate strength, and finally rely on witchcraft universal healing potion to make a desperate comeback, waiting for the humans in that world, only to be completely destroyed. This ending. Even so, Shen Yi only saved less than 2 million people in total. Even when he left, he didn't dare to talk to anyone, and he didn't even show his identity as the savior, and could only leave silently. What kind of savior is this? Shen Yi recalled all the things in the previous world, and his expression became a lot bleak. But he quickly re-energized. Too slender heart, unable to become a qualified savior, learning to be indifferent is a necessary character. After all, what he has to face is the despair of a whole world. Let's get to know the information of the world first, for example, cutting-edge technology or something. Shen Yi set the first thing to do. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com. Mr. Suddenly there was a soft voice beside. Is a sunny and lovely girl. Is wearing the uniform of the waiter of a certain shop, but the purple apron is very delicate. Sir, are you interested in tasting the new experimental products of our Moshi Chinese restaurant for free? This is cooked by Miss Mo. The girl's smile was very sweet, and she looked at Shen Yi's eyes with some sparkles. Is almost uttering the word so handsome. The reason for choosing him among the crowd is clear at a glance. Experimental new products. Silent took the flyer from her. Can the experimental products also be taken out for guests to taste? That's why it's free. The girl tilted her head playfully. Although the eldest lady is still unknown, her strength is definitely not weaker than that of a level 5 chef. The crowds come to taste it, so it's completely free. Shen Yi keenly noticed some words in the girl's mouth. 5-level chef? This world. He glanced at his backpack, and simply consumed a basic survey paper. Anyway, he only needed 10 points. No surprise. A world where chefs occupy an important place. The whole world has entered a period of peace early, and rapid economic growth has brought spiritual needs and spurred the development of the entertainment industry, and the food industry is the most important. Because of the low demonicization of this world, it seems to be completely reflected in the food. Good food can not only prolong life, even cure diseases, but also bring supreme spiritual pleasure. Is interesting. Shen Yi suddenly became interested. Before encountering the system, he was also a teenager who likes food. Moreover, according to the answers given in the survey paper, the chefs of this world can even influence politics and even the military to a certain extent. Not to mention the economy. Mo Group is a behemoth on the Chinese side. Yes, I agree. Shen Yi simply agreed. Great. The girl cheered, then she covered her lips with a ruddy complexion, and made an inviting gesture. This way, please. Shen Yi followed her to a restaurant in a 100-story building. That's right, the restaurant. This is a high-rise building with luxurious decoration and landmark architectural shape, but it is just a restaurant. The status of the gastronomy industry in this world can be seen. This is the first time Shen Yi has come to such a world. I am full of expectation while curious. And he soon discovered that there were many guests brought by girls in the same uniform around him. There are old people, children, and ladies. They wear all kinds of outfits, from workers in construction uniforms to ladies in mink coats. Looks like it was brought randomly on the street. It really is an experiment. Shen Yi said with a smile. Please rest assured that with the personality of the eldest lady, the failed works will never be presented to the guests. The girl in charge of entertaining Shen Yi seems to be a little worried that Shen Yi will think randomly. It's okay. Shen Yi still smiled. S warm smile made the heartbeat of many girls who looked around suddenly accelerated. After becoming a wizard, Shen Yi's charm seems to be directly max. That unique temperament is indeed hard to resist for people in the low magic world. Suddenly, Shen Yi's heart moved slightly. There is a feeling of being stalked. He glanced at a camera in the corner. Can something be discovered so quickly? Not bad. Shen Yi was right. Naturally, it was aimed at the reaction speed of official personnel in this world. After all, he just showed his face in the sky. And being able to find him through a camera in a large enterprise in a short period of time, this is enough to explain a lot of things. For example, the official execution ability, coordination with enterprises, and so on. Although I don't know if other countries can be as strong as this is a crucial factor in dealing with the end of the world. With this thought, silence, and some people sat in a restaurant. A small box-like area for one person. Let you wait a long time. Before long, a girl in a delicate violet patterned cheongsam and a top hat walked out. The voice is gentle, the smile is gentle, and the temperament is gentle. Is like the night in the south of the Yangtze River, with small bridges and flowing water. Just looking at it, I can feel a warmth flowing in my heart and calming down the hostility. If you have Miss Mo, you can wait as long as you want. A middle-aged man in a suit said with a smile, as if he had said the voice of most people. Mo Chu smiled shyly, blushing gradually. It is very important to enjoy food in a good mood. In this regard, she seems to have a unique advantage. Even if it is Shen Yi, his mood is much better at this time. Of course, if the next food is really delicious, so much the better. Today's dish is called Wanhua Kong Xiaohong, which is a Chinese pastry. The girl next to Mo Chu brought a plate of plates, but Mo Chu personally delivered the plates to each of the guests. The smiling face is full, like autumn water. When it was Shen Yi's turn, Mo Chu couldn't help blinking, as if he was taken aback. It wasn't until Shen Yi's eyes and the corners of his mouth that there was a smile, that her pretty face flushed. Please enjoy. As if to cover up his shyness, Mo Chu said softly before going to the next guest, but Shen Yi could clearly feel the acceleration of her heartbeat. Alas, this annoying charm! Shen Yi sighed in his heart, and then looked at the food in front of him. Is indeed Chinese-style cakes, yellow, purple, and blue, and the petals of various colors are scattered around in a random manner. There is a bright red rose alone in the middle, named a little red among thousands of flowers, which is vivid. Is just so exquisite that it makes people reluctant to taste it. Shen Yi picked up the chopsticks, picked up a flower petal and put it in his mouth, and his eyes lit up for a moment. The mouth melts, a pear blossom scent permeates the mouth, and the mouth produces fluid, as if a sweet and greasy feeling reverberates in the chest cavity. For a moment, Shen Yi even wondered if it was the feeling of being in love. He kept tasting. Each petal of a different color has a completely different taste, especially the little red in the middle, which seems to be the fragrance of rose and the sweetness of honey. When combined, it seems to make people come to an endless garden. The refreshing fragrance kept licking the nasal cavity, and the whole mood became extremely happy. This is definitely the best delicacy that Shen Yi has ever tasted. Even after eating it all, he closes his eyes slightly and keeps the aftertaste. Guest. A gentle voice came from the side. Mo Chu didn't know when he was standing there. There was a certain expectation on his soft facial features. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Can you give me your comment? Shen Yi opened his eyes and looked at her. It's so delicious, it makes me like the world. Shen Yi's voice was a little melancholy and regretful. Okay. Mo Chu tilted his head, and his hair like ink swayed gently behind him, seemingly unable to understand. The heart she poured into this food should make people feel joy and happiness. However, even the smile on Shen Yi's face gradually disappeared, turning into a serious expression. The gaze is like a sharp knife. Guest. Mo Chu was not only puzzled, but even a little messy. Let the people who taste the food get warmth from the food, and even relieve the pain. This is Mo Chu's belief and emotion in dealing with food. This is the first time that a customer has tasted the food she made. Expression. Dissatisfied? She was a bit wronged and a little unwilling. But how does she know? It is precisely because this delicacy is too delicious for Shen Yi, so Shen Yi only burns fighting spirit at this moment. Good things should not be destroyed. Even in the last world, Shen Yi did not have the firm determination to save the world as he does now. The delicacies of this world, leave it to me to guard. Shen Yi thinks like this now. Guest. Mo Chu was still in that soft voice, but it seemed to be a little firmer than before. Please wait a moment, Mo Chu, definitely he can serve delicious food that pleases the guests. No, I don't need it now. Shen Yi shook his head and looked at the restaurant's door. Someone is coming. From the very beginning, some people in suits gathered at the door's temperament, and the security guard who dare not stop, highlight the difference. Did you come here so soon? Shen Yi has a calm expression on his face. It is not the first time he has come into contact with such a person. He knows what kind of posture can achieve his goal. At the very least, the inner thoughts cannot be easily fed back to the expression. Mo Chu also noticed these people at the door. But she hasn't waited for anything to say. These people have already walked in, headed by a middle-aged man with a straight back, with a very friendly smile on his face. Miss Mo, I'm very sorry to interrupt your banquet, but we have something we want to know about this gentleman. He handed over a certificate. Special Affairs Bureau. Mo Chu knows that this department specializes in handling some special events. For example, spies or something. Excuse me, is there anything that I can't wait until the dinner is over? Her voice is still soft, but there is more insistence than before. As a chef, I can't allow my guests to eat at the dinner. I was disturbed before it was over. From this, we can also see the status of chefs in this world. But the man-headed glanced at the empty dinner plate in front of Shen Yi. They knew something about this eldest lady's character, and they waited until Shen Yi had finished eating before they came in. Besides, this is no ordinary person. When he thought of the video he had just seen, and then looked at the indifferent expression on his face, his heart suddenly burst. Then, no. Shen Yi suddenly said, glanced at the man, and then at Mo Chu. I know the purpose of your coming here is nothing more than asking my identity and the purpose of coming to your world. For me, it's not something that cannot be explained. The expression of the man is a bit wonderful. But his reaction was quick. Immediately sat down in front of Shen Yi. Then I would be more respectful than fate. At the same time, those who came with him were already greeting the rest. But Mo Chu did not leave. She opened her eyes wide and looked at Shen Yi dumbly, with those words in her mind. The purpose of coming to your world. Your world? Miss Mo. The man looked at Mo Chu, although he didn't say anything, but the meaning was obvious. Although the Mahist has a very high status. But this is the sixth type of contact. Visitors who do not belong to this world, if it is true, no one knows what will happen. She stayed too. Shen Yi spoke again, picked up the teacup that matched the dessert on the side, and took a leisurely sip. She is also qualified to know what I want to say. Shen Yi will not leave everything to the official staff to decide. The identity of Mo Chu represents another group that also occupies a not low position in this world. Gourmet companies, and chefs. Since the guest said so. Mo Chu took a slow breath, and also sat down opposite Shen Yi. She has also realized that something is wrong. But I don't know why, and I don't want to leave here. Maybe it's because the delicacies you cook are not satisfactory to this customer. The man also adjusted his breathing. My last name is Che, and my name is Yang Chong. He first introduced himself, and then said solemnly, first of all, I represent our world, our country, and welcome the arrival of Mr. With a boom, Mo Chu's head buzzed. Hiding her lips can hardly express her shock at this time. Actually, really. Although she had a strange feeling when Shen Yi just said your world, she still didn't think in that direction. may also be a unique habit of expression. But now, Cha Yongchang's words undoubtedly confirm this. The guest in front of me is not from this world? Me, I just let an alien food? Is he still not satisfied? You're welcome, I accept it. Shen Yi still has a calm face. My surname is Shen, my name is Yi, from the Earth number AD876, as you can see, I am also Chinese. Cha Yongchang's eyes flickered slightly. There is too much information in this sentence. Earth number? As a person in modern society, his understanding of this form is not bad, and there are many related fantasy works. Excuse me. He suppressed his inner emotions, and tried to behave more normally. Mr. Shen said, is it a parallel world? You can think so. Shen Yi nodded, Earth AD876 is my hometown. Compared with your world, there is not much difference. It's just that there is a certain deviation in history and culture. In this era, the level of technology they possess is similar. The reason why Shen Yi said this is to create a sense of identity. Compared to an alien who doesn't know if it comes from a strange world, a person in a similar parallel world, especially a Chinese, is obviously more likely to have a sense of identity. At least say that. The image of Shen Yi has been initially established. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Cha Yongchang's expression really relaxed, but he quickly thought of something. So, sir, how did you come to our world? He hasn't forgotten that when Shen Yi first appeared, he was in the sky. And the eyes that bloomed with light suddenly disappeared. At this moment, various conjectures flashed in Cha Yongchang's mind, such as superpowers. Even Mo Chiu, who had finally come back to his senses, looked at Shen Yi with curiosity. And Shen Yi, at this moment, his back straightened, his eyes sharpened again. The Earth number AD876 is just my hometown, and I myself, a member of the Transworld Organization, the Pan-Human Protection Association, serves as the Special Commissioner for the world. He said almost every word. But for the two people in front of me, it is no less than an earthquake. Mo Chiu's gaze is already a bit dull, and the beautiful face is full of blankness. Cha Yongchang is obviously more determined than her, but at this moment he can't control the change in his expression. Pan-Humanity Guardian Association? Salvation Commissioner? If he heard correctly, this salvation should be the salvation he understood. Mr. Shen. Cha Yongchang could already feel the constant secretion of his adrenaline and the unstoppable acceleration of his heartbeat, but he still asked with some hope, "Excuse me, what do you mean? Salvation is?" "It means literally." Shen Yi still stared at his gaze, and there was no joking on his serious expression. "The human civilization in your world is about to face destruction. It is a battle capable of exterminating every human being. Disaster of the last days. This is not only Mo Chiu, but even Cha Yongchang is buzzing in his head. Human civilization is going to be destroyed? All human beings, are all extinct? All humans." After a while, they still couldn't recover from this sentence, and even the picture brought by this sentence gradually became clear. "My family, everything around, the whole city, what I love. All will be destroyed. How could this be?" Mo Chiu murmured. "She loves cooking, she can feel happiness from the guests tasting her food. She also loves her family. And her friends. But if the end comes and the world is destroyed, then everything she cares about will disappear?" Shen Yi looked at their expressions and sighed in his heart. Doom. It's not just one person. The misfortune suffered by two people is even more terrible than war, because it represents the destruction of everything, whether it is beautiful or ugly, whether it is familiar or unfamiliar, whether it is love, still disgusted. Everything, everything, everything will disappear, and it will come to an end. In the last world, Shen Yi witnessed it with his own eyes and even tried to resist such an end. "Mr. Shen, could it, what's wrong?" Cha Yongchang seems to want to struggle a bit. Our world is very peaceful now. Although there are disputes between countries, they are all in mutual conflict. Restraint, there can be no nuclear war or something, is it a meteorite or something? Shen Yi looked at him with an unbelievable look. Reached out his finger and tapped it lightly on the desktop. Is like a drop of ink dripping into clear water. From the place where the fingers touched, the ripples continued to spread, covering everyone in the blink of an eye. Mo Chu and Cha Yongchang still felt that they were still sitting on the soft seat, but the surroundings had completely changed. Up. From an elegant restaurant to a vast starry sky. Is like being in a surround 5D cinema. This kind of change made both people's eyes widened. The reason why our association is able to save humanity across the world is based on two core technologies. First, cross-world transmission, and second, human observation technology. Shen Yi's calm voice came, cross-world transmission is just what the name implies. It can span different worlds, and human observation is a technology that combines various levels of science, magic, spells, etc., to achieve the effect of jumping and reaching the essence. As his voice fell, in the entire starry sky, leaping continuously, it was like flying a spaceship in the universe at high speed. Directly to a huge blue planet. Both people recognize it, this is their planet. It's just that, on this planet, it seems to be covered with burning fire. It's like someone lit candles all over the planet. The principle is too complicated to explain to you. In layman's terms, as long as civilization exists and human beings are still active, it will inevitably bring some changes to the world. This depends on the will and direction of civilization. We call it the fire of civilization, but Shen Yi's words stopped again. This time, both of them saw it. The flames all over the planet are disappearing. The disappearance of the blockbuster. Although the planet is still that one, it is rapidly becoming dim. Cha Yongchang and Mo Chu's heart could not help but grabbed. Through the words of Shen Yi just now, they have understood what this fire point means. However, the fire is still disappearing. Until, completely annihilated. Left behind a deadly planet. This is what we are observing. 3 years later, the number of the Earth is SD878, which is the planet you are on. Shen Yi is also watching this planet, it took less than 2 years. In the time, the signs of human civilization activities on the entire planet have basically disappeared, and the remaining fire will be completely extinct after 3 years. Based on our experience, it has been possible to make a judgment of humanity extinction, so I came here now, with the task of saving humanity. That. Cha Yongchang turned his head abruptly, staring at Shen Yi closely. If all this is true, then this person is the savior. If you want to put all hope on me, then you may be disappointed. Shen Yi slowly shook his head, I did come with a mission, and I am indeed dedicated to saving humanity, but a disaster is a disaster, and our association is not omnipotent. Shen Yi created the organization Pan-Humanity Guardian Association. Is to explain what the system brings. Is to gain trust. Is also to give some ill-intentioned people a shock. But this does not mean that he will be able to succeed, and even if they can succeed, it does not mean that they will be unharmed. Shen Yi touched the desktop again. The surrounding environment has also changed again. Becomes surrounded by tall buildings. Even among the tall buildings, there is clearly visible Chinese. However, there is no one. The messy streets, lonely and silent, there was no movement except the trash bags flying in the wind. Just when Cha Yongchang and Mo Chu didn't know what happened. Shen Yi spoke again. This is my last mission. Shen Yi glanced at the two of them, then looked at the familiar environment, the expression of Dan Ran's face appeared for the first time. It was loneliness, with a little sadness. The human nature of this world disappeared completely in less than a year. The culprit was a virus. The disaster came too fast. The leaders of this world were full of mistrust in me, even in the end. At that moment, they still cannot unite. If they can take all measures to prevent the infection and mutation of the virus earlier, it will not wait until I make the medicine, and there will only be less than 2 million survivors. Less than 2 million. Mochu murmured the number. From this empty metropolis, it seems that the shadow of the disaster still remains. The slogan on the wall, the messy protective clothing and disinfectant on the ground. Cha Yongchang is more careful than she observes. If you want to create a post-disaster city, you cannot do it simply. There are countless bugs in the pictures in the movie. However, this city does not. At least from his perspective, everything here is extremely real. Can even vaguely guess what happened in this city from some details. For example, the remaining blocked facilities on the street. In his heart, has begun to believe everything Shen Yi said. The end of the world, is it really coming? Whether it is this supernatural ability or everything displayed in front of him, it is far beyond Cha Yongchang's imagination, and even beyond the cognition of all mankind. This reality makes him, an experienced official, have a kind of shivering sensation all over. Mochu is even more complicated. She is just a little woman who loves chefs, and she is pretending to be gentle in her heart, but at this moment, it is this gentleness that has become the culprit to torment her. When she thinks of possible disasters, she thinks of her relatives, and she thinks of her passion for cooking. The unspeakable fear almost swallowed her. When facing a huge disaster, fear, confusion, and despair are all inevitable emotions. Shen Yi's voice sounded in the ears of the two again, but this time, it seemed to be with a touch of gentleness. And the magical power quietly calmed the hearts of the two of them. Mochu turned his head and looked at this unique temperament youth. In the water-like eyes, there is the timidity that I see pity in. Is different from Cha Yongchang. She faces such a reality, and it seems that only the mysterious man in front of her can give her confidence. But we have no other choice but to fight the disaster. Shen Yi's mouth seemed to have a smile, and he looked at the two people in front of him. You don't have to doubt my purpose and my determination. This is also my mission and mission. I am professional in saving the world. The surrounding scenes, once again faded away like the tide. The two seem to have returned to the restaurant. All have the feeling of a sudden dream. However, the two people's moods are completely different. Cha Yongchang's head was very confused, still immersed in this incredible news, his eyes fixed on Shen Yi, trying to see something, but this was obviously in vain. This man is too mysterious. And the news he brought was too shocking. As for Mochu, although her mind is equally chaotic and she is also staring at Shen Yi, it is clear that she already trusts Shen Yi to a certain extent, or even regards it as a kind of reliance. Mr. Shen. Cha Yongchang took a deep breath, as if he had made a certain determination. Everything you say, including everything I see, I will pass it on, but can you give some more evidence? Such a thing, it is really hard to accept all of a sudden. What he represents, after all, is not an ordinary person. Is an organization that needs to be responsible for this world. If everything is true, they also shoulder the burden of saving the world. Understandable. Silently nodded, and he didn't expect to be able to convince everyone at once. This requires a process. Pondered for a moment, he opened his mouth and said, what we have is only the result of the destruction of human principles. We are not clear about the specific process. However, according to the changes in civilization, we can still observe some disasters that have occurred in the last few days. I will write to you. Actually, this is a kind of prop drawn from the last World Lottery. Disaster prediction card. As long as the card is drawn, you can consume points in the mall and purchase unlimited purchases. But 100 points once. To Shen Yi, who has more than 1 million points left, it is just a trivial matter. Even if he can really rely on these predictions to save some people, then he can still get a lot of points. Picked up the pen. Shen Yi used a few photos directly. Disasters worldwide. At 7:15 this evening, there will be a magnitude 7.2 earthquake in the Apu crater area, which will trigger a volcanic eruption, which will trigger a forest fire. 13 people were killed and 78 people were injured. At 3:17 in the morning tonight, there will be a 5.7 magnitude earthquake in Songshan County, 2 houses will collapse and 3 people will die. Tomorrow at 9:28 am, there will be a magnitude 6.2 earthquake on the Virumanra coast, triggering a tsunami, and 123 people are missing on the beach. Tomorrow at 3:43 p.m., a flight to West Asia will crash due to extreme weather, killing all 157 people. After wrote this, Shen Yi also paused for a while. This world. Are there too many earthquakes? The crash is also very difficult to happen, let alone caused by extreme weather. A coincidence? Mr. Shen. Cha Yongchang didn't care about the earthquake, he was just a little surprised. Can the crash also be predicted? The closer the time, the more detailed the human observations, and we also have some other means to assist. Shen Yi simply flicked, and then handed him the note. That's it. Thank you very much. Cha Yongchang stood up and bowed deeply to Shen Yi. Regardless of whether this is true or not, an outsider like Shen Yi came to rescue them. Naturally, he was grateful. Finally, I need a reminder. Shen Yi looked at him and knew he was going to leave, so he said calmly, strictly speaking, my mission is to save humanity. Human principles, refers to human civilization. Cha Yongchang couldn't understand why Shen Yi said that. That's right. Shen Yi looked at him calmly, his eyes were so deep that even Cha Yongchang suddenly felt a sense of panic. Then, he heard Shen Yi's voice again. In the last world, for me, the mission was a failure. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. But for the association, my mission is still completed. Do you understand what I mean? The mission, is it still completed? The car shuddered forever and abruptly. Because he understands. Although there are less than 2 million people left, human civilization can still continue. From the perspective of anthropology, anthropology is indeed saved. But, that's only 2 million people. In a modern society, how many humans are there in the world? The comparison between 2 million people is like a drop in the ocean. Even 2 or 3,000 years ago, the number of humans in the world was much more than that. Is this really a salvation? If I don't show up, even this last fire will not stay. Shen Yi whispered as if he knew what he was thinking, I will naturally try my best to save more people, but I also hope that you don't underestimate the doomsday. I will definitely bring these words. Cha Yongchang bowed deeply again, longer than just now, and his actions were firmer. Thank you very much for coming, Mr. Shen. He already understood the meaning of the sentence Shen Yi just said. Although the other party said it was here to save the world. But, the world is still their world. It is still them who suffered disaster. Miss Mo, please don't spread this news. Cha Yongchang said to Mo Chu again. I know. Mo Chu nodded, and then said in her soft voice, I will only tell my father and grandpa. Cha Yongchang nodded. As Mo Chu's father and grandfather. Even if I knew it, I wouldn't be so stupid to spread this out. Cha Yongchang left. Although he tried to restrain himself when he left, the feeling of rushing could not be concealed. He must go back quickly and report this unprecedented major incident. He can even imagine what kind of storm will be set off after the news of the end of the world is spread. Only Mo Chu and Shen Yi are left in the restaurant. The waiters all looked from a distance. In their eyes, it was more like a beautiful first meeting between a rich lady and a temperament brother. Some people were already smiling with their aunts. But the actual situation is not too ambiguous. Shen Yi sipped the tea after the dessert one by one. The slightly bitter fragrant tea dilutes the remaining sweetness in the mouth, and this tea pushes the aftertaste of the dessert to its peak. And Mo Chu was a little embarrassed. Slender legs rubbed against each other slightly under the table, and she secretly looked at the young man in front of her. I thought he was just a handsome guy with a unique temperament, but he didn't expect that he was a savior from other worlds. What will happen to the end of the world? Can he really save the world? What is he thinking? Are you satisfied or dissatisfied with the dessert just now? Mo Chu's heart is in a mess. Anyone who knows that the end of the world is coming at a glance, it is difficult to recover in a short time. Miss Mo. Shen Yi's gaze suddenly looked at her. Hey! Mo Chu exclaimed, and then quickly said, yes, I'm listening. What was thinking in his heart was that his pupils were so deep. It is a gradually dark color in layers. I want to see the people who are talking about the Mo group. Shen Yi didn't know what the eldest lady was thinking, only when she was frightened by the news of the doomsday, so he smiled. Although I have only come to this world, I also know the status of food companies in your world, so I may need your help. This is also one of the reasons why Mo Chu just stayed. Although he still doesn't know the specific manifestation of the end. But it's always good to get in touch with more capable people. And Mo Chu looked at a silent smile. The originally overwhelmed heart seemed to have been smoothed a bit. Although the end of the world is terrible, some people really regard saving the world as their own work. I'll go to convey it right away. Mo Chu's voice was still soft and greasy. She looked at Shen Yi, seemingly hesitant, but she still said softly, Mr. Shen, there is one thing that I care a little bit about. The dessert just now, are you really satisfied? Her eyes looked at Shen Yi eagerly. As a chef, satisfying important customers is almost the same thing as faith. Shen Yi was taken aback. But soon, the smile on his face seemed to expand a bit. Miss Mo. Shen Yi leaned back on the chair and smiled naturally, let me tell you this, the food you make, but it gives me another reason to want to save your world. Mo Chu blinked. The tips of my ears became ruddy. This is really the most honored compliment for Mo Chu. Mo Chu stood up, pretending to be calm and softly said, please wait a moment, Mr. Shen, I will go and notify my father. After speaking, he turned around and left. Just the moment he turned around, his cheeks were already flushed. This is too hot. For her as a chef, this sentence even surpasses the words I can save the world for you. Mo Chu wailed in her heart, and she couldn't bear it. If she stayed any longer, she was worried that she would lose her temper. Shen Yi naturally also noticed the lethality of his words on Mo Chu, which made him feel a lot happy. After all, food and beauty are beautiful things that can make people happy. Besides, the start of this world is much better than the last one. At that time, he was just an ordinary person, and he didn't dare to have any contact with officials and people with real power early. But now, he is already a wizard with impressive strength. You don't need to worry about your own safety anymore, and you can greatly increase your right to speak. Next, I will further build my own savior identity. It is best to control more local power. Mo Chu didn't let Shen Yi wait long. In less than half an hour, a middle-aged man wearing a simple t-shirt walked over with Mo Chu. Shen Yi was a little surprised when he saw the middle-aged man. What an old handsome guy! The tough face, casual expression, casual short hair, and crow's feet at the corners of his eyes add a mature charm to him, which is definitely a killer for young and old. Is almost a third of his own handsome. This is the current chairman of the Mo Group, one of the most wealthy and powerful human beings in the world. You're Mr. Shen, I'm Mo Yuanbei. Mo Yuanbei came to Shen Yi with a smile on his face. He was not polite, and just sat down. After Mo Chu left, he went straight to the subject, I listened to everything. Chu has said it, but I want to ask one more question, is that all true? The end of the world. When Shen Yi was observing him, Mo Yuanbei was also observing Shen Yi. You reading www.youkansha.com. The first reaction is naturally a handsome face and unique temperament. Moreover, Mo Yuanbei's observation needs to be more careful. He has already noticed that there is not a trace of skin blemish on the face of this young man. There are no pores, moles, acne marks, even the slightest blemishes, and there are no traces of makeup. In theory, this should be impossible. It's normal to have doubts. No one wants the end of the world to come. Shen Yi smiled calmly, I can naturally give the evidence, but no matter how much evidence I give, there are still only two paths before you, believe me. Or don't believe it. If you believe it, what will happen? Mo Yuanbei continued to ask, if you don't believe it, what will happen? If you believe it, you might be able to save a lot of people. Shen Yi glanced at him faintly, if you don't believe it, it's definitely not me who wept bitterly in the end. You should understand that the misfortune that still comes after doing your best is nothing like nothing. Doing the right misfortune in the back is a completely different torture. At the very least, the former can make you feel more relieved when facing the eyes of the barbarians. The smile on Mo Yuanbei's face finally disappeared little by little. He stared at Shen Yi for a moment, then slowly said, it sounds like Mr. Shen does have extensive experience. I have a lot of experience. Isn't it a good thing for you? Shen Yi raised the teacup in his hand, seeming to look carefully, but in his eyes, there is a kind of obscure vicissitudes of life. A lot of the newcomer salvation specialist has not learned to treat death as a number, and he has a great sympathy for people's tragedies. This is unfortunate for you. What Shen Yi said at this time was not all pretentious. After experiencing the last world, many of his mentalities have changed. Even if I dare not say that I am a qualified savior. But it has also broken away from the mentality of ordinary people. Anyone who has witnessed such a doomsday can never stay the same. Mo Yuanbei looked at Shen Yi, did not speak any more, but was silent, as if thinking about something. At first, when he heard his daughter say the end of the world, he thought he was joking, but when he heard that the Special Affairs Bureau was involved, he felt a little wrong, so that he heard that the savior from the parallel world showed supernatural power. After that, he rushed over immediately. And the feeling of this initial meeting, unfortunately, did not find any traces of lies. Mo Yuanbei looked out the window. It was a high-rise building with blooming flowers. This scene that was accustomed to the past, and even a bit depressing, now makes him trance. Our world, this planet, really has reached its end. He muttered to himself, and then quickly recovered, turned his head and smiled at Shen Yi, sorry, Mr. Shen, I some gaffes. Because of this question, he asked as early as the first sentence of the meeting. Also got the answer. It's okay. Shen Yi's expression eased a little, and then shrugged. In addition, what we can determine at present is the future of the demise of human civilization. The world may not necessarily change. Under certain apocalyptic conditions, it may be intact. This is how the last world was. Mo Yuanbei was taken aback, and then helplessly shook his head, this is nothing comforting. I'm not comforting you either. Shen Yi said casually. Mr. Shen laughed. Mo Yuanbei's sitting posture was a bit straighter, and he really had some of the world's top entrepreneurial tolerance. This change in attitude also marked his initial belief in Shen Yi's words. Believed in the end of the world. And what is in front of you may be the savior of the whole world. What does Mr. Shen want us to do? For now, I need to know what you can do. Shen Yi is no longer nonsense, I mean, regardless of the cost, regardless of the consequences, mobilizing all the power you can mobilize, which step can be achieved. Although I don't know the form of doomsday yet. But if you make a preparation early, you may be able to save more lives. Shen Yi can also get more system points. I understand. I will collect relevant reports. I believe I will not disappoint Mr. Shen. Mo Yuan paused and asked directly, then, Mr. Shen, please take a few people to the other parallel worlds. How likely is it to take refuge? He just agreed to the other party's request. Now it's time for him to make a request. Hee hee. Shen Yi chuckled lightly. He was not surprised that Mo Yunbei would ask this question. Facing the end times, different people have different reactions. Most ordinary people can only feel despair. The reaction of the powerful people is how they save themselves. They are more capable and therefore more capable of action. Whether it is to build a spacecraft, build Noah's Ark, or even an undersea base, all kinds of plans that ordinary people can't even think of, in these people's minds are practical plans. Go to the rest of the parallel world. This kind of plan is undoubtedly the best method. However, I must tell you clearly, and everyone who has this idea. The feeling that Shen Yi brought to Mo Yunbei suddenly changed at this moment. Mo Yunbei couldn't control the expression of horror. Because in his line of sight, everything around him faded quickly at this moment, and the whole world seemed to be only Shen Yi. And become extremely tall. Is like a overlooking the entire world. Even his voice roared like thunder in his ears. The qualification to travel through the world has nothing to do with power and wealth. It only depends on the level of life. If you cannot transform from a mortal body, you will never be able to break free from the destiny of humanity. This answer Shen Yi also said to those in the upper world who tried to escape from human civilization. As far as the result is concerned, even those who thought they would be safe to escape from the planet in a spacecraft were completely wiped out. After all, how can people who can't stop the virus escape the virus? Shen Yi didn't put too much pressure on Mo Yunbei either. His aura condensed for a moment, and quickly dissipated like a tide. But in such a short time, Mo Yunbei's back has been soaked with sweat. The old handsome man's temperament is very little left, and he looks a little embarrassed. Even had to lower his eyes to hide the horror in his eyes. Although he heard his daughter talk about it, the other party possesses a magical ability that allows them to see a picture like a holographic image. But I never thought of it. Is so terrifying. Is just the tip of the exposed iceberg, it has completely surpassed his initial estimate. Transform from a mortal body? Worthy of, is the savior who works to save the world. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. I took the liberty. Mo Yunbei adjusted his state, raised his head, and wiped the sweat on his forehead very naturally. However, when it comes to the possibility of going to a parallel world, it is not impossible. Shen Yi's mouth curled up. Mo Yunbei opened his mouth slightly, and the temperament that he managed to recover suddenly disappeared. Is there really a possibility? Then why are you scaring me so serious? Ordinary people can't bear the pressure of traveling through the world, but if they are eligible to join our Pan-Humanity Guardian Association, they will naturally be in charge of the association. Leading it to the path of transcendence is one of the benefits. Shen Yi Mo Yunbei's tone was indifferent, but there was an inexplicable allure in Mo Yunbei's ears. The road to extraordinary. Just these 4 words, in his heart, set off waves after waves. Why does the world's cuisine have such a high status? Can give people spiritual enjoyment is one aspect, but, more importantly, the ultimate food can also prolong life and even cure diseases. So, what about extraordinary? Mo Yunbei's heart was beating violently. Although he had a lofty position, he did not have the talent of a chef, which was a great pity for him. Mr. Shen, I don't know your association, what are the criteria for recruiting people? Mo Yunbei asked, forcibly enduring the throbbing in his heart, but the desire in his eyes could not escape Shen Yi's eyes. Shen Yi did not answer. Just looked at him with a smile. I'm very sorry. Mo Yunbei understood the meaning of this smile. He took a deep breath, but this time he didn't conceal his feelings anymore. I took the liberty again. Team Chu. Seeing that Chu Lin had stopped the scene, Cha Yongchang whispered beside him, what should I do with this overseas tsunami tomorrow morning? There is no way to notify, we don't have a proper reason. Chu Lin groaned, and said, find a rich man to cover the coast, and it will be a coincidence afterwards. This is already a humanitarian solution. I can't think of a better one in a short time. Okay. Cha Yongchang nodded to show that he knew, hesitated for a moment, and continued to ask, then, Mr. Shen's side. No need to go for the time being. Chu Lin thought for a while and shook his head. Although it has been confirmed that the other party does have predictive ability, it still does not mean that the other party can really save the world. We still need to grasp more information, whether it is what is about the end of the world is about the other party. Unless there is evidence that the end of the world is happening, it is actually placed in front of you. Then it's time to do whatever it takes. And they are going to do it now. Is to verify the information while preparing for a response that is not so costly. Understood. Cha Yongchang looked at Chu Lin with some admiration. Although he is not too old, Chu Lin's courage and his past achievements prove that he will be a qualified commander. Che Yongchang began to get busy. This night, for them, for many people, is destined to be a sleepless night. However, Shen Yi slept soundly. It's been a long time since he slept so soundly. When woke up, it was already 10 o'clock in the morning. Wearing a white bathrobe, coming down from the large mansion with a swimming pool, I saw Mo Chu working in the kitchen, wearing pink house clothes, wearing a lavender apron, and there were cute characters in children's animations on it. Pattern. Wake up! Mo Chu turned his head, still smiling very softly. There was such a trance, Shen Yi really thought it was in his own home. The one in front of me is my wife, or family. But he quickly put away his thoughts. After experiencing a world catastrophe, Shen Yi's ordinary people's desire to live and work in peace and a good family has diminished a lot. Why are you wearing such clothes? But Shen Yi still asked, you shouldn't live here, right? Because, the theme of today's lunch is a family banquet. Mo Chu stepped aside to allow Shen Yi to see the ingredients on the kitchen counter. A chicken, some beans, an eggplant, and ribs. Shen Yi had already guessed what she wanted to do, and suddenly said, do you have to put on the corresponding clothes when you cook food? I just think that these are also very important to people who enjoy food, especially the image of a chef. Mo Chu picked up the shovel in his hand, although he was a little shy, he still turned around generously, it's like, well, some tea must be collected by beautiful girls. So that's it. Shen Yi already understood, however, few people will do this level. If you can make people who enjoy food have a warm feeling in their hearts, it's worth it for me. Mo Chu pursed his mouth in embarrassment. Even in this world, there are not many chefs who can do this level. Even because of the lofty status of chefs, many chefs treat diners with a desire to conquer. Is to use a bad attitude, and even formulate weird rules, so that the diners want to be delicious. It seems that this is how you can prove your strength. Of course, Shen Yi didn't know these things. He can only feel Mo Chu's hear this heart for the diners who enjoy food. Then I will look forward to your family banquet. Shen Yi also smiled back, his eyes softened involuntarily. You can look forward to it. Mo Chu looked energetic. Shen Yi smiled, sitting on the dining table with a stack of papers. These were all sent by Mo Yuanbei yesterday. Contains information about the entire Mo Group. Mo Group's largest and most important one is naturally the food industry. They have the world's largest farms and pastures, with an incomparably rich variety and extremely rigorous management. Every delicacy can be traced back to the source of the raw materials. Make sure there are no problems. Shen Yi can only say that it is indeed a world of gourmet food. However, in addition to this, the Mo Group has also used its influence and financial resources to spread the industry to many areas, such as construction, medicine, communications. Although the vast majority of them are joint equity participations and are not in a word, this is also a behemoth that can be called a chaebol. There are still many giants like this in the entire world. This involves an extremely influential organization called the Gastronomy Association. All in all, Shen Yi found that there are many things he needs to know. Reading www.yuyuganshu.com. He didn't recover from the piles of documents until the enticing fragrance gradually drifted through his nose. Mo has already served the last dish, pork rib soup. It's really a family banquet. Shen Yi took a look and found that he could recognize it all: brown chicken, pork ribs soup, eggplant, fried beans. Do you have these few dishes in your world, Mr. Shen? Mo's eyes were bright, and the rice that had been served was placed in front of Shen Yi. This is the so-called parallel world. Shen Yi nodded, unexpectedly a little impatient. A piece of yellow braised chicken was put in the mouth, and the fragrant and creamy taste suddenly poured in. Although it was extremely delicious, it was not too overbearing at first, but as you chewed, a familiar feeling gradually emerged. Is like having a similar taste in the depths of memory. When is? It seems to be when I am with my family. Shen Yi raised his head and looked at Mo, who was looking forward to him with a smile, and could not help but sighed. It's really amazing. Thank you. The smile on Mo's face suddenly bloomed. There are many chefs better than me. But there should not be many chefs who can convey their hearts with good food. Shen Yi ate piece by piece, not stingy with his praise. What I really enjoy is also in this heart, no matter in which world. The character of being considerate of others is rare and amazing. Nothing. Mo was a little embarrassed to be praised, but looking at Shen Yi, there was a trace of longing in his eyes. Mr. Shen is really powerful, saving the world and bringing continuity to human civilization. Hope, by comparison, what I have done is too trivial. What kind of person is Shen Yi? The few people who came into contact with him in this world might have different opinions. But for Mo, mysterious and powerful, these must be ranked behind the identity of the savior. If there is no Shen Yi, but only the news that the end of the world is coming, then she still doesn't know how desperate it will be. After all, the more gentle people will be hurt by the misfortune of the world. But Shen Yi is able to face this kind of injury and shoulder the hope of others. In case she can also have some courage and ability like this, that's good. Mo thought, but couldn't help feeling ridiculous for his own thoughts. In the past, she firmly believed in cooking skills that could bring happiness to others, but before the end of the world, she seemed extremely insignificant. Besides, she had no other abilities. Aren't you going to eat? Shen Yi suddenly found that Mo had been staring at him blankly. Although he knows that he has a very high charm value now, it is uncomfortable to be stared at like this. Yet, Mo also recovered, his cheeks slightly red. Even if it collapses in the next second, the food will be eaten. Shen Yi smiled and said only when she was thinking about the end of the world. What's more, as long as this kind of food is still in front of you, things will last forever. Not the worst, this is your irreplaceable contribution as a chef. Yes, is that right? Mo was taken aback. Of course. Shen Yi took a sip of the delicious pork rib soup and exhaled, at least it's like this for me. I understand. Mo suddenly squeezed his small fist, his eyes seemed to be shining. I will definitely not disappoint you. It's good if you understand. Shen Yi glanced at her strangely, and continued to cook. Wizards are not immortal cultivators. Without the saying of Bigu, they still have to eat rice. What's more, this rice is really fragrant. After eating and drinking, Mo took the initiative to clean up his dishes. Shen Yi sat on the sofa and was still looking at the documents. Until the afternoon, he suddenly realized that it seemed that the plane crash predicted yesterday was about to happen. Shen Yi remembered that the disaster prediction card was about crashing in extreme weather. But it is different from disasters such as earthquakes. Weather disasters are one of the easiest to predict with modern technology. Therefore, air crashes due to this reason are extremely rare. Maybe you can check the situation and see if you can find something. Shen Yi thought, and stood up directly. I want to leave. he said. Now? That dinner. Mo Chu ran out of the kitchen. However, the yukata on Shen Yi's body has changed in an instant, and turned into a brown tight-fitting windbreaker with a hood. The hem is embroidered with a silver-white devil-like bird pattern, adding a sense of mystery and solemnity. Sense. I should be able to come back before dinner. After leaving this sentence, his figure disappeared directly into a ripple. The witcher profession drawn in the system in the last world is not like the wizard in ordinary fantasy works, but more like the power of Harry Potter or the Scarlet Witch. As long as there is enough magic power and the corresponding spells, you can do many things that seem to completely violate scientific principles. Flying, transforming, teleporting. Yesterday, Shen Yi left a coordinate mark on Cha Yongchang's body. And now he directly cast the space transfer spell, and he came to Cha Yongchang's side in an instant. Is invisible. He first looked around, a room without windows, and then looked at the dense screens here. The busy people could roughly guess where it was. Can such a place be formed in such a short time? Not bad. Shen Yi is quite satisfied with the efficiency of dealing with major incidents. I'm sure, at about 3:43, only one plane will land at West Asia Airport, about 10 minutes. A staff member suddenly shouted. Can the crew information be found? Have the people on the scene arrived? Chu Lin almost immediately rushed over. The people on the scene arrived, but it was late at night and it was in a thunderstorm environment. There was no way to get closer, so they could only keep their attention in the waiting room. The staff responded. What about our weather satellites, what have they found? Chu Lin asked again. Just as Shen Yi thought, Chu Lin also attached great importance to this easy-to-observe disaster. But no matter what, it's overseas. Don't even talk about arranging the equipment in advance. I don't even know which plane will encounter the crash. Can only count on the on-site personnel through video recording and other means, supplemented by climate satellite monitoring, to see if there is any useful information. Shen Yi listened here for a while, and almost figured it out. The most likely place for an air crash is not a certain place on the way, but the West Asia Airport as the destination, because there is a thunderstorm caused by a storm from the southeast. At this time, the sky over West Asia was already roaring, and lightning flashes across the sky like dragons and snakes, bringing a huge roar. But, reading www.yuyuganshu.com. This is a storm that has long been expected. Various forecast data indicate that the impact of this storm on the landing of the aircraft is limited. Does have the value of personally investigating. Shen Yi didn't waste time either, showing his figure, and then said calmly. I'll go there in person. The moment he made a sound, it was as if he had pressed some kind of switch key. Everyone in this room stopped their movements and voices, turned their heads stiffly, and looked at this sudden appearance, dressed as if they were medieval. Man in wizard robe. Everyone was stunned, because the scene was really scary. Mr. Shen. Cha Yongchang, who had seen Shen Yi first, reacted, shouted with wide eyes, even his voice was a little distorted. Yet. Shen Yi nodded, staring at the screen. I am also more concerned about the cause of this air crash, so I will come over to see if you have any valuable information. His tone is very unusual. When it's normal, it's like saying, I'll stop by and take a look, don't care. However, this is a top-secret base. Gurgle. Che Yongchang saliva. He can be sure that the formation of their group is absolutely confidential information, including this place even more so. Even most people are restricted from going out, and there is absolutely no omission in all links. How did he know? When did you come? How come? Although I know that the other party has certain mysterious supernatural powers, the feeling that this situation brings is as if all of my actions are all under the control of the other party. Does that kind of forecasting method not only predict disasters?